first in Inside Edition investigation into the International Churches of Christ. It's a relatively new religion based in the States, but it's growing even here in traditional England.
The International Churches of Christ is one of the fastest growing religions in the world. McKean has vowed to evangelize the world in just one generation, but many members have fled the church, charging deception, manipulation, and mind control. They all accuse the church of using deceit, harassment, and intimidation to attract more and more members. So producer Rich Slansker, carrying a hidden camera, joined the church in New York City.
Is there anything when it comes to sexual morality that's on your conscience that you would have done? Like I said, like reality or sexual.
No. Missionaries are being sent all over the world to start new international churches of Christ.
We're gonna have a good time
in my Father's house, in my Father's house, in my Father's house. We're gonna have a good time in my Father's house, where there's joy, joy, joy.
Former Muslim becomes a Christian, gets raised on up to be an evangelist, and he even ate a piece of pork. I mean, that is the simple.
I see the church as being a radical pillar of faith in changing all of Europe, easily. The first century church evangelized the entire known world in their generation, about 33 years. If they could do it without Facebook, without Twitter, without cell phones, we can do it. We've been accused of, there have been people, well, I can't think of an exact thing I've read, but I know there have been individuals that have said, a friend said this, or someone said this. You guys are, you're manipulative. Oh yeah, that's what it's been said about. We've been called love bombers. You guys just love people too much, and you persuade them to join your church.
Can you imagine this? You don't have to get up for work anymore. There's no more mortgage payment. There's no more traffic. There's no more tube strikes. There's this new concept, the good news about hell. It's terminal. You go to hell for a little bit, and then all of a sudden you're destroyed. I'm not going to debate this, but what I will tell you is there is one good thing about hell. Only one piece of good news. Here's the good news. You don't have to go there. That is the only good news.
I was involved with every kind of physical, sexual impurity that can be imagined, things that are shameful to even mention.
You are to be commended in the Lord for your faith.
Then I started coming to the church and seeing people talking about these uncomfortable subjects, and I went, whoa, and yet they weren't judged.
A very beautiful person. She's our sister, and she's my girlfriend. Her name is Jeanette.
There have been people that have not found our teachings acceptable.
I'm a very insecure person. I'm afraid of being hurt. I'm afraid of showing the real me. I'm afraid of being rejected.
We're a radical church, and we teach that you got to actually do what you say. And we get a lot of criticism because of that. And we've had negative things said about us because we really don't believe in just talking about it, but actually doing it. However, the Bible teaches there's only two religions, the right one and the wrong one. And I think we apply that with certain principles, but we get afraid to apply that with religion because it's sensitive. So we started going after other young single professionals and doing things where we could introduce the Bible. We basically have about 150, 160 members now, starting 5 years ago, and we've sent several people to other cities, including we just started a mission team. I sent a mission team out to Stockholm, Sweden this year. We raised over £100,000 for that effort. We really go after young people because they're the future. And so The numbers, we feel very good about the numbers, but we, of course, have a mission to build a church of 10,000. And someday we'll be in Wembley Stadium.
Anyone who isn't baptized into their church will go to hell.
Truly, we serve a great God.
Yes, we will gather at the river, the beautiful river. Gather with you, saints, at the river that flows by the throne of God.
So this is a booklet that the cult published in the early 1990s when they started to have some legal issues. It was a series of letters with images and illustrations that all of us children were to read, as it was kind of preparing us in case the home we lived in had an issue of the same type. The Children of God began in 1968. It was founded by a man named David Berg, who was formerly an evangelical preacher. David Berg attracted his followers because he had quite an unusual take on Christianity, in the sense that he believed that true Christians should go back to living the way the first Christians did. So he believed in communal living, he believed in 100% dedication to the cause, sacrificing and doing whatever it took. So at the beginning, the belief system was quite normal. As he became more powerful and recruited more members, the doctrines started to become crazy. So he then moved even further after that and decided that all of his members needed to show love to all of the other members in the cult. So he implemented a new law called the Law of Love, which meant anything done in love was pure and was right. Unfortunately, this extended to the children as well. As is often the case in cults, what starts out seeming relatively normal gets worse and worse and darker.
God now only has one law, the law of love, to love God with all your heart and your neighbor as yourself.
The purpose of the ideology is to separate thinking from feeling. They're not letting you think about your feelings. Once you're in, how they brainwash you and keep you in, that follows very clear patterns that we can look at.
Well, I see cult leaders as being basically psychopaths, that it's a fear-based system led by a charismatic and authoritarian leader or leadership group. They have a combination of this charisma, which is necessary if you're going to get followers. They have extremely high needs for control, they're frightening, they're bullies in essence.
And this is T.B. Joshua. Now I put him up because I think this is a really growing thing. He is a Pentecostal minister from, I think, Nigeria, the kind of happy, clappy churches. There may well be some of those that are not cultic, but there's a lot that are, and they're growing, and they're not just going after African folks. I'm getting, British-born white people coming who've been really harmed by these groups. There are sports cults, martial arts cults, there's a running cult I've heard of. There are many yoga-based cults. Again, doesn't mean that all religion is bad, or all politics is bad, or all yoga is bad. It's just that the leaders happen upon that particular form that they can use. And then they use it in this highly controlling and bullying way. The structure of the cult is principally there to isolate, and each layer kind of protects the secrets of the one further in, and also protects the people on the inside in a way from the reality of the outside world.
The atmosphere was very tense. You couldn't trust anyone because all the children were told that they needed to report on the other children if they did anything wrong. So there were no real friendships that could be formed, so to speak. because there was that element of distrust and betrayal that was very much encouraged by the adults.
And there's no private space and there's kind of no public space where you can discuss things openly. You're just shoved together, but yet you can't trust the other people in the group. What you'll find in cults is that relationships with family, parents, your children, your spouse, your girlfriend, or with close friends, all of those are controlled in a cult. There's going to be a lot of obstacles put in your way if you're trying to have an actual close attachment relationship to somebody else. Your primary attachment has to be to the leader.
Our producer was told that his parents, the Pope, and even Mother Teresa would go to hell if they didn't join the International Churches of Christ.
According to what we've heard, what's going to happen to Mother Teresa?
I just wish that Laura could remember how she felt not that long ago about me and about all the other people she loved so much. This was all a very, very slow, gradual process. I was at this point beginning to get quite panicky. It was really like treading on eggshells, and the closeness. You know, I felt part of her was still really close to me. This is the praying man, and it came entirely out of her imagination, and I just find it very, very restful. Back in 2008 and 2009, you know, she told me that she was sort of going on this journey. And then she told me that she was seeing a woman called Anne. Laura said, Anne is teaching me about the chakras. So I said, oh, what are the chakras? And Laura explained they were sort of energy points. And then Laura's style got darker. I found this picture, I found it dark, but I found it mesmerizing. As you can see, there is a huge change in where her imagination is taking her. She told me that they had 3-hour sessions, and she said that she was going to work through the heart and probably separate the heart from the head. And I think she's trapped in a psychological prison, and she's not even aware of it.
So slowly you're going to be drawn away from your pre-existing attachment relationships, and you're going to be drawn towards the group. The fear is coming from the group, and it's not a good thing to go to the source of fear to get your comfort. You're walking towards the fear. And when we do that, we go into a state of kind of chronic trauma. That state of chronic trauma causes us to dissociate. And dissociation, simply put, is when we're not able to think about our feelings. And in fact, then, in that kind of gap, the group or the leader can insert their own ideological explanations for your feelings.
As far as I can gather, most cults work the same, that, you know, you isolate people and you put fear into them so that they develop phobias which make them scared to leave.
We believe that the words spoken today are going to be from God's Word. I really believe this is just the beginning. Amen?
But the person who's just come out of something, their mind is just spinning. They don't know what they've come out of. They've come out into the world where they're not prepared. You know, if they've been born in the cult, they may have had very little experience with the outside world. And in fact, we see very high rates of suicide and drug and alcohol problems.
So about 4 years after I left the cult, I was feeling extremely depressed and very suicidal and just had lost all hope really in the future. And I was on my way home from work one day when I got off at this station, intending to throw myself in front of the next train. And luckily a lady got off the train and asked me if I was okay, and that kind of shook me out of the state I was in. I was just completely in a state of shock and just really somewhere else in my mind. I don't believe there's any law in the UK that prevents religious groups from using religion and spirituality to control their members. There are laws about just about everything else to protect people, especially people who are vulnerable. And I consider everyone who's in a cultic environment to be vulnerable because they're not thinking for themselves. They are thinking what they're being told to think.
I hope Laura will come back. I was 60 in August, and I just prayed for Laura to be with me on my 60th birthday. And I keep going because I have hope, but the longer it is, the more, the worse it gets actually, and hope becomes harder to hold on to.
I don't think anyone is beyond being brainwashed and recruited into a cult. I think the people who think that they're safe are actually more at risk because they're not aware to what's going on around them.
All the studies that are coming out show that these young people are coming from a great variety of backgrounds. But unless we understand the methods and the mechanics of how these groups operate, we too can become recruited.
I think 14 years on, I finally got to quite a happy place in my life and accepted the past for what it was, and I'm able to kind of move on and not forget it ever happened, but learn to live with the fact that it happened.